Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to discuss the implications of Microsoft adding Microsoft Teams to the Office 365 platform. Back in March 2017, Microsoft added Teams, giving us a very easy to use informal collaboration space to work with our teams. Which is great, but we also have a number of other collaboration tools already available to us. So we're just going to discuss how it is that all of these different programs fit together and how best to make a decision about which of the collaboration tools to use for your team or department. So yes, it was back in March 2017 that Microsoft fully released Microsoft Teams, a chat-based workspace that comes with Office 365 and provides an informal, easy to use instant collaboration space for teams and departments to have focused discussions, work on documents, hold meetings, and generally just get to the information that they need to work together and collaborate. And it is a great tool. But all of that sounds very familiar to really what we also get through SharePoint and also Office 365 groups. Through Office 365, we are provided with a number of programs that we can use. And to be honest, it isn't as clear as it used to be as to which tools we should be using when. A few years ago, it was easier to understand that Outlook was for email and discussions, files were stored on network drives, Excel was for data, and so on. But that has changed, and the reason for that is because of the way the working environment has changed. Think of the way we worked a few years ago, and it would tend to be more individually driven, working at your own computer, often in silos. But now we tend to do more work collaboratively. Research shows that on average we work in twice as many teams as we did before, for example. Also, the work we do is more global, and users have an expectation to be able to use different tools on different devices and have access to the information they need all of the time. So technology has to adapt to meet those changes in demand, which is what drives Office 365 and the different tools that it provides. Therefore, we no longer implement a one-size-fits-all approach as we used to, but provide a selection of tools that different teams and departments can implement to best support the type of work that they are doing. Which sounds great, but there is a but. And that is, but how do teams make the right decision as to which tools they should use? Well, one answer is to follow a systematic approach, such as the example here, which uses 4 steps. So step 1 is to understand the business needs. Look at the processes we have currently. What documents do we use? How do we want to collaborate? And who do we want to collaborate with? The second step is to understand the tools that are available. So look at and research those different tools. Understand what they are capable of and what they can't do so well, and analyse the benefits and the disadvantages for your team. Third step is to make an informed choice. So assess the different choices that we have, consider different scenarios, and make a decision. And then the fourth step is to implement it. Sometimes it's necessary to have a sponsor and champions to do that. Educate colleagues as to what tools they should be using, provide support and training, and reward and recognise effective usage of the tools. Now, for a smaller agile team, it can be very quick to make that decision. So guys, let's try using this for our weekly meetings or project updates or whatever. But for larger teams, it potentially might require a greater amount of planning and discussion. So usually, if you choose to follow this method, step 1 is very much where your expertise comes in and where you specialise. Step 2 is where you should look to training and demos and other support to educate you in the different technologies. Now, with that in mind, let's then talk about those choices that you have for your collaboration tools. So these are the 5 main business tools I have chosen to call out: Teams, Skype for Business, Yammer, OneDrive and SharePoint. So Teams, what's it for? Well, as we've said, it's for chat-based collaboration within a team or department. It's very helpful for having discussions organised around teams and channels, so you can have conversations around documents and you have real-time communication with your colleagues. It's very easy to use, very informal, and it makes working together very interactive and really quite fun as well. Now, I've also included Skype for Business here. Well, it's probably the case if you're using Office 365 then you're pretty ingrained with using Skype for Business now. We use it for speaking to colleagues, participating in virtual meetings, doing video calls, doing screen sharing. The benefits we get are that instant messaging capability, screen sharing, and all the other parts that we get from it. Now you might think, well, why do we include Skype for Business in here? But I think it's important to include it in this discussion because there is a lot of functionality that crosses over, particularly with Teams, in relation to that chat-based collaboration that you do. And also Teams introduces a meeting capability. So there needs to be that decision about how do we do those meetings? Do we use Skype for Business or do we use Teams? So it's just an important one to bring in so that we are clear on that type of collaboration we're going to do. Now, you might also be using Yammer for your social. So Yammer is similar to LinkedIn and Facebook and those other social tools that we use in a social environment, but it's designed to be used within the business workplace. It's great for creating communities for discussion, sharing best practice, new ideas, and communicating wins and news of events. It's really great for knowledge sharing and having that ability to collaborate across different communities. Now, those three apps are really concerned with the collaboration type work that you do. The other two here, OneDrive and SharePoint, are more concerned with the document location. Although that is quite a generalization because, of course, SharePoint has a lot more functionality than just documents. But in terms of the context here, what we're interested in is document storage. So OneDrive is used for storing private business documents in the cloud. It enables us to access those documents from any device and it can be shared with other people as well. Whereas SharePoint is where we tend to store team documents, so files that need to be accessed and worked on by the members of the team. It has a lot more functionality, of course, because it has that intranet-based portal environment, and we get lots of other functionality through the lists such as calendaring and task features and so on. But in terms of this discussion and in relation to OneDrive, think of OneDrive as for personal business documents, SharePoint for team documents. Again, this is where the tools cross over because Teams has a whole files part to it, so we can store files in the team. Well, currently, the functionality around the files part of Teams doesn't work well. So currently we're at May 2017, and at the moment the functionality of the files part of Teams isn't as good as it could be. No doubt that is going to change quite soon. Microsoft are constantly working on and updating the programs, so I'm sure it will improve. But at the moment, the files part of Teams isn't really as effective enough to be used as an alternative to OneDrive or SharePoint. But that's likely to change in the future. Now, this isn't a definitive list. There may be tools particular to your department that you use, and you might even consider including other Office 365 programs in the discussions, such as Planner and OneNote. One that isn't on the list that you might expect to see is Office 365 Groups. Now, I have chosen not to include it in the discussion because I think it confuses the decision-making process, and taking it out simplifies a little the decision in terms of what to use when. Now, some of you might be aware of groups, some of you might not. So just to explain that Office 365 groups have been around for a little while. They are quite like Teams in some respects, in that they give you a conversation space, you can store documents and so on. But they have quite a problematic interface and navigation isn't great. So because of that, I would suggest just ignoring groups as a choice and consider Teams for that type of collaboration. Now, a couple of points to make on that. Firstly, if you're already using an Office 365 group and you're happy with it and it works well, well, in that case, you might not need to change. The second point, though, is, again, as of currently, May 2017, we can't share team content externally outside of the business. We can with Office 365 groups, but currently not with Teams. We can't share documents and other content with people outside the company. Again, that's very likely to change. The current timeline for that, in fact, is just June or July this year, so quite soon that's going to change. But just be aware of that important point when you're having that what to use when discussion. So thank you for watching. I hope that's helped understanding the important decision about which of the Office 365 tools to use when.